All right. Hello, everybody watching live or watching later. Apologies for a slight Eventbrite mishap, but we're on it now. My name is Rodney Phipps, the COO of WealthShare. Wanted to take some time tonight to just talk about investing, period, sort of the real basics, entry-level investment, what it takes to get into the business, what it takes to make the decision. When is it too early? Is it ever too early? What are some of the terms to be aware of? And also talk to Andrea, who's joining us tonight, about her sort of journey through buying her first house, then eventually selling real estate, and then becoming an investment specialist. So before we kick off, I'm just going to kind of go over this investment disclaimer. This is sort of a very important part about what we do and how we do it. One of the things you'll hear later is EMD, or our exempt market dealer. And they're a group that we work with, Atlas One, that ensures that we're operating to security standards, that we're looking out for all of our investors, that they're making decisions based on their risk balance and what's best for them. So take a second to read this disclaimer when you can, and understand that what we're talking about tonight is not direct investment advice. It's just to sort of walk through the process and the entry level things to be aware of when you get into investment real estate. So now that that's kind of through, I wanted to talk a little bit real quickly just about myself. Like I said, my name is Rodney Phipps. I've got a history investing in real estate since 20 years old about. From there, I got into the restaurant business and the music business. So really involved in the entertainment side of the space, and used investing in real estate to back that and to support pursuing those sort of things. And along the way, I got to know a lot of really wonderful people, really skilled, really interesting, and very a wide range of backgrounds, and got to see how one of the big roadblocks I saw for people investing, period, was sort of this idea that maybe it wasn't for them. They weren't either educated enough or rich enough or experienced enough or didn't know the right people. And so therefore they sort of put that, that idea, not even to the back burner, but just sort of outside of their realm. And so when we got started with WealthShare, which is a real estate investment trust, REIT, that was one of the value props that I really wanted to focus on. I wanted to expand the access for as many people as possible. I wanted to open the door to people to start thinking about these things earlier in their life, and to understand tax strategy, net worth, all those kind of things that I see just as a general population. I don't think they don't really teach it in schools the way I think that they should. And so by the time people start to learn about it, they're missing out on a few valuable years of sort of setting the table for that kind of stuff. So today's the first conversation of hopefully many. WealthShare is one of the options, but it's also one of many options out there. I want to present it because I believe in it, of course. And I think that it's a really good, slow but steady, on the secure side of investments. But there's lots of different options out there. There's some more aggressive returns in development. You can go into mortgages. There's all kinds of different sort of options that you can use out there to start setting yourself a portfolio. But it's a lot, and there's a lot of information to take in. There's a lot of terms and phrases and ideas that get tossed around. And I really, really want to be a part of just getting it down to the absolute basics. What's the entry? What's the requirement? Why should we be thinking about it? That kind of thing. So I just want to take a quick second to say hello to Andrea. Thanks very much for joining us today and having this conversation. Natasha and I were speaking about this, and thought you'd be the perfect sort of first guest because of your history. When Natasha first met you, I believe you were looking to purchase I can't remember, was it your first home?
Yeah, it was my first home, and so Natasha was definitely a big influence for choosing to go with kind of an investment property that was also our first home.
Awesome. So I'm going to just ask a couple questions. Some of the things that I've heard in conversations or through, friends of mine, or just kind of watching and listening as I tend to do. And then you can kind of let me know what you think. So at the beginning, when you're looking to buy a house, and Natasha, you're looking to buy originally just purely as a residence, not with any sort of idea around investment. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we were looking at a few different options. My husband Kevin and I were part of some real estate investment networks and different groups, and that's where we started to get a little bit of a bug in our ear that, okay, maybe we should be looking at something, but we were looking primarily to buy our first home together. So when we did start our search, we were looking at options that were going to be just our primary residence, and then Natasha kind of steered us also to looking at options that could have some income potential as part of them as well.
And when you were going to purchase that house, this is one conversation we have a lot, which is sort of the net worth discussion. Did you have sort of like a TFSA with tax-free savings account stashed up? Were you using, registered funds, a portfolio of things to purchase that first house, or had you socked away money kind of with this plan, and then it was time now? You had built it up, it was ready to move, if you don't mind me asking, of course.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. For sure, we had some savings planning to buy our first home, but we did utilize some of our savings accounts in terms of RSPs and tax-free as well.
Okay. And so you had more experience kind of taking the tax planning strategies out there, mixing it into your yearly strategy to get you to that point where you were able to invest and buy your first home.
Yeah, I think we're just initially kind of starting to get into that for sure.
Right. Yeah, because that's part of this. When we launched WealthShare, that's actually a question I wanted to have for you as well. With the first thing was, what is a REIT? Like, before we even got into how to put the money in, what is a TFSA or RSPs, or why are you so excited about registered funds? It was like, what is a REIT? So you had an initial amount of experience. You're starting to put, every year, put a little bit of money into these different avenues to be able to get you to that spot. But there's a lot of, like, you're just learning that. And then imagine someone like me walks by and goes, hey, you're trying to buy your first home, check this REIT out. Like, how do you digest all these different points of information, or do you even at that point?
I think it's tough for sure. There's a lot of information out there, and I think it's hard to make those decisions. And like you indicated at the beginning, we don't really get that education in school. So unless you have, a mentor or a family member, someone who can kind of help guide you, I think a lot of people don't have that education or background to know what's available or what the advantages are to some of the different funds. And I think a lot of people often just, go with whatever it's offered at maybe their lender or bank, and aren't aware of maybe what other options are.
Right. That reminds me, I put the cart out before the horse there a little bit, in bringing up the title, the REIT wording. How did you actually decide to start putting money into RSPs and TFSAs and things like that? Like, what was the impetus on that? You said you were sort of early on making those decisions. Do you recall what kind of triggered the decision to start planning that way?
That was honestly my parents' influence. From when I was at a young age, that was something that they kind of instilled in me, that, some portion of my money that I would get for a birthday or something like that, we would then put aside and invest. So a big influence was definitely from my parents.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting one, because from my experience, like I said, in the restaurant business, the music business, as a realtor yourself, it's a lot of commission derived income. For musicians, it can be shows. You can have a run of shows. For industry people, it could be tips were great for a few weeks. And so there's sort of this idea of like ebb and flow in the cash generation. And a lot of the people that I speak to, either their parents didn't talk to them about it, or they're, what is a TFSA? Like, why is that even a term that you're throwing at me? But someone has to start the conversation. You have to even be alerted to. You go to the bank, maybe the bank tells you about it, maybe they don't. because they go, oh, this is a, they have this sort of income stream. They're probably not thinking about this sort of thing. But when you have an income that can be really ebb and flow, something as basic as a tax-free savings account seems to make a lot of sense. It's sort of like the first, here's where I start. If it's $50 this week extra, I have. If it's $100 extra this week, I have. Like you said, your birthdays or, moments where there's gifts, you start putting a little bit away at a time over the course of a year. Now you're ready to have enough money to make a decision on something. But if someone's not talking to you about it, like, where do you go? Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was more of a statement than a question, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then you're buying your first house, you're talking to Natasha, and you start going through the idea of maybe we should think about this being an investment as well as somewhere for us to live. Do you remember sort of the financing decision or how the bank was looking at your portfolio or what net worth meant to you at that point? Because this is another term that gets thrown around a lot, where I don't feel that maybe the understanding of what exactly net worth means is properly communicated or understood.
Yeah. I'd say when I was initially considering that first purchase, I don't know if I knew a lot about that, or it wasn't like a big consideration in my mind. But what we did end up purchasing was a property that had a legal suite in it. So that was definitely a positive thing. I mean, even in terms of qualifying, because the income from legal suite can then be, added to or considered in what you can be qualified for. But I would say that now, of course, that's something that my husband and I discuss a lot, is our net worth and what that looks like. But when we initially started, again, if you don't have that education or someone providing that, I think it's something that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Well, and that's actually the perfect segue, which is the qualifying, because now as you've, your career is adjusted, you're working with a lot of investors. Qualifying is a word that comes up, I would imagine, quite often. And the net worth of any individual really highly affects their ability to qualify, right? We're not going to go way into the weeds on that one, because there's people much smarter than me that can go on the details, and we'll have lots of other great events there. But just as a general principle, having money in things like RSPs, in investments, in your TFSAs, in the broad spectrum of how you present yourself, those are all things that contribute to whether or not a bank thinks you're worth assigning a mortgage to. Is that correct? From your sort of view?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So then now you
Rodney, maybe like defining what net worth is briefly, or I can, but
yeah, why don't you do that?
And I think it's an important term, because even in like hard assets in real estate, you hear a lot of people talk about how many doors they have, but really, I think we should be thinking about what our net worth is versus, what our number of doors are. Because if those number of doors are, don't have any good equity positions in them, they're not necessary, or they're negative cash flow, they could actually be a detriment to your net worth rather than a benefit. So net worth is just very basically calculated as any assets you have. That could mean savings, it could mean stocks, RSPs, your TFSAs, and then any equity you might have in your home is all added up. So you take your assets minus any debt on those, and any other liabilities you might have in your life, like a student loan, for example, would be a liability, or a car loan. You would minus that from any of the assets you have in your personal name. Sorry, just thought I would.
Yep, that's perfect. That's much better, succinct way to put it. It's a term that, like you said, it's good to quantify, because it gets thrown around a lot, and not everybody is aware of it, especially people that are just trying to enter the market, or are interested in investing, or want to find different avenues to put their money to work, which is, the sort of the next leeway, or the next segue term, which is passive income. This is another thing that gets tossed around a ton. I've invested in stocks, I've invested in crypto, I've invested in NFTs, some better than others, in all of those realms. I've been involved in some of the highest risk businesses there are, the restaurant and entertainment business. So passive income is something that can really pique people's interest, especially as they're trying to grow their net worth, as they're trying to figure these other avenues out, take higher risk decisions, whether it be in their primary career or in their investing portfolio. So as an investment focused realtor, Andrea, the passive income point is how early in the conversation does that kind of catchword pop up for you? Do you find, are people thinking of it that way, or is it just a general income, like, I get that, I want to make some more money doing this thing?
Yeah, I would say it doesn't come up often or right away. It's not the initial thing that people think about. I think that a lot of people, when especially if they're considering real estate in particular, it's not always a thought like, oh, I can invest passively, or, oh, like, I don't need to have hundreds of thousands of dollars necessarily to do this. Often the first thought is, okay, it needs to be something that's more active or something more hands-on. So it's usually something that comes down later in the line, or as an option, like, oh yeah, this could be a possibility.
Right. And so there are people that are investing in their first investment property. They're not thinking of it really being active or passive. They're not even really using those terms. They're just kind of going, I want to invest in real estate. I'm going to go buy a condo or a duplex or something that I, and self-manage it and do all those things. They're not really thinking like, oh, by doing that, I'm actually kind of adding career 2.0. It's just, I want to get invested in real estate. Is that,
for sure.
accurate statement? Yeah.
So
that's, of course, that's one of the things that was exciting about WealthShare, but WealthShare is just one of many options out there. Is, okay, if your bandwidth, for lack of a better term, is already really full, you have a really busy schedule, you got a really absorbing career, and you want to start expanding outside of that, but the actual minutes in the day are limited. So that can also be something that I think that can keep people from investing in real estate. Is they just, I just don't have the space for it. So it could be awareness, net worth, no one's talking about it, just education, or believing that it's not for them. There's like sort of all these different triggers or reasons why people don't get into real estate investing. But the passive one seems to be one that is, even if they're not thinking about it, is kind of a key. Now, there's obviously lots of clients that you would have that decide, oh, this is awesome, I want to make this my primary focus. I'm going to quit my day job and I'm going to do investment real estate for the rest of my life, which is also awesome. Like, if you can manage that, that's amazing, but it's not for everybody. And that's not the ideal for everybody that wants to be out there investing in anything. And so that's kind of where we got with WealthShares. We're thinking, okay, this isn't a way that we can put our team's expertise together and allow people to invest in something that's passive, that they can also learn from, that they can pay attention to. We can have conversations like this, but also for the team to be looking at someone and say, look, you may not be in the best spot to really take on something that's active right now. It's awesome that you're looking at it, but when I start hearing your story and I start hearing all the things you're involved in, adding this to it where you're at in your life may not be the best thing for right now. So like, maybe take a look at something that's a bit more passive right now. It can help set the table and kind of get you to a point in your life where maybe you do have more bandwidth, or maybe you find out this is as much as you ever want to get involved in. Do you find yourself having conversations that are like that, where by the time the reality sets, people are sort of like, this isn't maybe all the internet cracked it up to be, as far as what all it would take, to really like get in there?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially at first, when you start to realize, okay, if you are doing something more active, if you're wanting to do renovation or value add or something like that, it is a lot of work. And we work with investors from out of province quite often, and it is possible, absolutely, to do those things from afar if you have the right team in your corner, but it can be a little bit more challenging. And I think, it's Also something to consider in terms of diversification, like for my investments personally, you know, we have been very active in the types of properties that we've pursued and the investments that we pursued for real estate. But, you know, a big part of the reason why I wanted to invest in a REIT personally was because, okay, the last year has been really busy for us. And, you know, we didn't necessarily have the capacity to take on too many other of our own active projects, but we still wanted to continue to invest with some funds we had available. So that was the perfect fit to still, you know, stay active and be investing, but to have that side, more passive side as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome.
Rodney, I think too, for particularly people, younger people, I think it's going to take them longer and longer to be able to do what Andrea did, unless they have help from their family. So using passive investments to help grow their money while they're in those years of saving for their first down payment is, I think, really smart to diversify the funds that they do have, and to be able to hopefully get the kind of returns that they're looking for and still be involved in, you know, real estate and taking those steps forward. But even if they're not quite ready or able to take that more active step on their own, because I think historically, at least when I'm talking to clients, they kind of reserve this passive stuff for later on in life, right, when they don't want to be so active anymore. But I think it should almost be a little bit reverse now that it's so difficult to get into the real estate market. We need to be thinking about it even sooner than ever, because it's only going to be harder for the younger generation to reach, you know, their first home. Even it could not happen until they're 30, let's say. So what happened between 20 and 30? There's lots of time there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's like that's sort of a conversation that I've seen in the social media zeitgeist is an awful word, but let's call it that for lack of a better one, is around how hard it is for the average person entering market right now, or the workforce, or, you know, kids are living with their parents longer and they're staying at home longer, and then they're having to create their own careers rather than get a job, work for 25 years, 30 years, you know, get your retirement, and that was it. You know, growing up, we were told, save your money, put it in a savings account, stash it there, and then when you're ready, you know, you have some money put away. But even that doesn't really work now, because the returns you're getting on savings are less than, you know, whatever's happening to the market, right? So having an alternative solution early on is actually, like your point, is the most key, starting that right away. And that's where I wanted to talk about, just maybe with both of you, around the actual process. So the first thing is just that. What's the difference between a savings and a tax-free savings account? Because when I was 10 years old, I went into RBC. I got my little Leo card. I'm still an RBC client, so it worked. But it was just a kid's saving. You put your birthday money in there. You kind of do your thing. You would get, you know, I don't even want to quote numbers on how low the return was to keep your money there, but it was basically the money was there instead of in your wallet. Inflation being the way it is, the money that I put in there would be worth less today than it was when I put in. You know, interest rates relative to inflation, interest rates that you would get on that relative to greater inflation. So then one of the aspects that was given to people in Canada specifically is this tax-free savings account.
Over 18.
Over 18, yes. So you start with your Leo, you get to 18, you start getting a job. That's when you're looking at paying taxes more aggressively. You're looking at more full-time employment. Like I was saying earlier, especially when you have people that are self-employed or looking after, they're not on salary, they're looking after their own tax returns every year, they're getting money in fits and starts or in bits and pieces. The tax-free savings account is this nice little tool that you have where you can put, I believe, up to $6,000 a year, I believe is the total in Canada currently. Do not quote me on that. And so basically you have that money, you put it in there instead of your regular savings account, and that's tax-free money that you can put aside. Then you can do certain things with that money without it being taxed. There's a whole bunch of regulations and sort of restrictions and things like that on what you can do with that money without paying tax on it. But one of the things that we spent a lot of time and energy with WealthShare was to ensure that WealthShare would be one of those vehicles that you could take that tax-free savings money and invest it into something like WealthShare. There are other funds out there that you can do it with. There's a certain, we'll do another event where we really get into the nitty-gritty of what tax-free savings accounts and RSPs mean. But I want to just talk sort of the general principle. So if we're able to take even $5,000-$6,000 a year in bits and pieces, then at the end of the year, that's some money that you put aside. It's also money that can be part of your tax planning, so that your big tax bill that you've kind of maybe forgotten about or sometimes didn't, think about at the moment, there's a little bit of alleviation there from having put it in there. So now you have twofold. One, your taxes and your returns are a little bit more organized, but also you have some money to put into something like WealthShare. Or like I said, there's plenty of other options out there. Or if you both would know this better than I, if you're with something like that long enough, you can then use that money towards buying a house or investing in your own property.
You can self-direct your registered accounts in Canada. So if you open up an RRSP or a TFSA, you can self-direct what you want those funds to be invested in Canada. So this is something a lot of people don't know, or they don't know it until much later on in life. And so you can still invest normally as you would into RSP or a TFSA. And you could even take a portion of it and self-direct it and leave a portion for your bank, your financial planner at the bank to do what they want to do with it. Most people often, before they learn this, just let the bank do its thing, and they have no idea what it's even invested in. They have no clue where the funds are going to, which is understandable because it's not very clear. And so they may have a little conversation with you about your risk tolerance and, what are your goals for your investment? And so this is a way to be in control of where your money is going and what it's being invested in. And you can invest in some really cool things. So again, it's about diversification. It's not just about WealthShare. This is we're one option out there of what you can put your money into. And so learning this really early on would be super beneficial, especially as like the world changes and your interests change. Like I'm always passionate too about investing in what you're interested in. So aligning your investments with that, I think is really key, especially with the kind of social responsibility I think our younger generation has a much better care for, that they could align where their money is going into the types of things that they want their money to be put to work in. And then, the really nice thing about WealthShare is we accept investments starting at $5,000 or more. So we're not talking about, unattainable numbers here. And also being able to align that with things that you're interested in are two things that we really pride ourselves on here at WealthShare.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Being able to invest for $5,000. When we first started putting together WealthShare and talking to our legal team and our accountants and doing all the due diligence and the market analysis, that was one of the big barriers that we saw, was this gap between how much it would cost to get somebody in and what the minimums were for a lot of the funds that were out there. Being able to get it to $5,000 is attainable. It's attainable under the cap of 1 year of savings in your TFSA. You also mentioned the Registered Retirement Savings Plan, RRSP. This is another one I feel like people aren't talking about a lot, or when they do, they sort of go, okay, I know I got to put some money in this thing. I'm going to put it there because that's what I've been told is good. And then, like you said, the bank sort of handles it. And then it's this sort of mystic fund that's over here that maybe does some things, or you get your statement and you're going like, I don't really know. That doesn't look good. Minus percentage doesn't look great, but like, I trust that that's what's happening. Even if all you get out of this is like, hey, maybe I should take a look at what my RSP is in. I should take a look at where it's being invested. I should understand that I can self-direct that. What a registered fund, like why is this part of what I do every year come tax time? instead of assigning this to this thing that I'll like think about or worry about when I'm older. Which is also something you said earlier. People are thinking like, okay, that's for down the road, retirement, registered retirement savings plan. So I got to worry about that when I'm retired. But if you wait till then, you're missing out on a major opportunity to diversify, educate, explore all these things that make it exciting. And like you said, WealthShare is one option of many. I myself am really excited about it, of course, but also about NFTs and crypto and the stock market and all these other things. But as interesting as those things are, if I had invested my entire portfolio into either of them last year, crypto or NFTs, I'd be in tears right now. So having some of it in there and some of it in real estate and some of it in, even the RSPs that the bank control, like that, we're certainly not saying don't look at the bank's funds at all, because I think it's important to have that balance. But the more you can get involved in, the earlier you can get involved in it, I think that really helps make decisions later on in life. I'm wondering if if you guys have any sort of like a common question that you receive from people that specifically have like, they know they want to invest in real estate. They've watched some Grant Cardone. They're like excited about what's going on. But they're like, it's the first shot. Like you're the first person they've talked to or the second. Is there like a couple common questions that you hear back or pieces of like comments or anything like the one I always hear is like, it's not for me. Like this is for someone that makes more money than I am or has more education or whatever. Like I'm not ready for that piece of my life. I need to, get older or get a better job or whatever it might be. But I'm curious if you guys hear, if there's some questions that you hear in that format.
I tend to, when talking to new people, either they're very afraid to start, very, very afraid. Analysis paralysis is a real thing, a very, very real thing. And they're afraid to start, which is why going and buying a piece of real estate is a big deal. Investing $5,000 with WealthShare to learn and be a part of all the things that we're doing and the network we're building and the 200 investors we already have is a great place to just, dip your toe in without a huge commitment. So, and the analysis paralysis part is definitely something that I'm sure you hear a lot too, Andrea. And so they usually fall in that vein, or they're just like pumped up. They're going to go, they're going to get it done. And they do, don't get me wrong. They definitely do. But then there's this reality that sinks in. That's like, damn, I just bought myself another full-time job. Now I've got my 8 properties. I was supposed to be financially free. And now I am, working my day job and now working my night job. And now all I do is work. So where's the balance in all of that and not getting stuck with analysis paralysis and also not buying yourself another full-time job? And I think for what I talk to a lot of people about is like, the answer is always somewhere in the middle, and the people that you work with. And there's also nothing wrong with like changing the weight of what's important at what time in your life as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It changes one year to the next, right?
Yeah.
You could be super interested in and ready to go. Then you read that one extra book, and then all of a sudden it's like you said, like that's a second job. Maybe I need to take a step back and reevaluate if that's really where I want to be. If my actual goal this next year is to, travel Europe or something.
Yeah,
so
like
Andrea's
Instagram a lot, and they're doing projects. They're out there doing projects right after their work, which is great.
Yeah.
But it is also, that's necessarily not for everyone.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear, even not just from, I guess, other investors, but other people my age sometimes, that like when we talk about real estate investing and some of the things that we're doing, I think it's intimidating to a lot of people because of that. They're like, I don't want to be a landlord. Like, I don't want to deal with that. You hear all the horror stories of things that can happen, or they see that, yeah, like a lot of our weekends or evenings are spent doing projects, and that's something we enjoy. So we're okay with that. And we've learned a lot along the way. But it's not for everyone. So I think, investing in something like WealthShare is such a great, like you said, like dip your toes in the water. You're able to invest in real estate, but you don't have to be a landlord right away. Like if that is intimidating or scary, or that's not what you want. You don't want someone calling you or, you know, that sort of thing. And I think it's a really great option.
Yeah, I think that that's something that's been consistent through the team, the WealthShare team, of being able to provide that as an option, both for entry level clients, but also for people like at all points in their life. It's an additional option that keeps from like pulling away from your daily bandwidth or the things that you want to do, and allows, you know, if you want to get involved with the education, we're going to, you know, every few weeks we do different talks, we interview different really great people. We want to be transparent with everything we do, the good, the bad, the ugly, like it all comes with it. It's not easy to invest in real estate. I think that's from my personal experience, watching from the side and watching all the social media influencers, if you want, like all the different ads in this, it's like, invest in real estate, it's so awesome, you're going to change your life, which is true. Those things all can happen, but they sometimes get away from the fact that it comes with challenges, and it's not as easy as just going out and buying a house and then 10xing it. There's all these things that we kind of skim over, which is maybe a wider social media problem that, you know, I can get on my soapbox about another time. But they don't talk enough about how difficult things can be, and that working and trusting people that have gone through those difficulties and have solved the problems and continue to deal with the problems, and will share them. Will communicate what's happened, will sort of be a part of, if it's not for you right now, then you can invest in something like this. And then maybe in 2 years, when it becomes time, you go, you know what, or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, I've learned all this. I've met my returns. I've seen my net worth grow. Now it's time for me to take what I've learned, take what I've earned, and put it towards my own projects, or balancing it off. That's also part of it, right? It changes. What could be good now could be totally different later. And that's part of what I think is, for all of us anyways, very exciting about WealthShare. Anything?
The only note to add is, just because we talked a lot about registered accounts, you don't have to use registered accounts for WealthShare either. You can use cash. For real estate in general, I think people should look at it long term, whether you're looking at WealthShare, whether you're looking to buy a piece of real estate long term. If you look at almost any, you know, region in Canada, long term real estate does one thing, and I think that'll continue. So it's a way to invest your money in something that's, you know, a proven thing that we are not going to stop needing here. It's not like real estate's going anywhere. So think long term. Diversify as well within real estate too. You know, don't ever put all your eggs in one basket, but you being able to utilize these types of investments, whether it's active or passive in real estate, just thinking long term. And I mean, I know buying your first house, even for example, in your 20s versus in your 40s, will lead to a very, very, very different result in your retirement years, even just from paying off the mortgage versus, you know, renting. So obviously we're very pro real estate here, but I think that's the main thing to remember, is we have to think long term. There is no magic sauce to get rich overnight here. That's, you know, not what real estate's about. Maybe in the crypto world.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's the hopes and dreams of the crypto world. And
we're the safe and boring.
Yeah, but if you look at the most successful investors over history, whether it's even within crypto space now, there's like the conservative crypto and there's the aggressive crypto, is portfolio balance. You know, someone like Warren Buffett, you take maybe 15% of his probably not even that much now, of his portfolio is a little more aggressive. The rest is the slow and steady. And real estate investing as part of your wider portfolio should be likely broken up that way. Now, when you're younger, maybe you could afford to take some more chances and things like that, but it shouldn't be completely offset. And so the real estate part is the part that's that slow and steady burn, specifically when it comes to us, is that slow and steady, longer term. I still think very competitive returns, but is setting it up year to year to year, to be a backbone piece of your portfolio. And sort of the last point on that, and for the evening, we have an exempt market dealer that we work with. Maybe you could pull up the link for that while I just wrap this up, if you're able. So we work with an exempt market dealer. You also hear the term EMD, which is just that, an exempt market dealer. We work with Atlas One. Whatever you do, whether you invest with us, whether you invest with someone else, whether you just want to find out some more information, I highly, highly, highly recommend you go create an account on their portal. There'll be a little bit of KYC, getting to know who you are while you set up that account. But it will allow you to look at a bunch of different investments. They have some really great people there that will answer questions, whether it's about WealthShare or something else. You can go in there, set up the account. I know sometimes people are worried about setting up, another account in another place. I really highly recommend this because it can now be part of your strategy as well. When it comes time for tax season, they can give you some advice. They can help point you in the right direction for how to set up trust accounts so that you can properly assign your own funds, whether it's RSPs or TFSAs or LIRAs, whether WealthShare is the right thing even for you. We believe it's in what we're doing. We also believe it's not the only option and should never be the only option. And our exempt market dealer is specifically there to ensure not only do we think it, but we act it. So I highly, highly recommend creating an account. Take the time. When it comes time for taxes, you can make the decisions now so that next year tax returns don't creep up on you. You can part money aside slowly over the year or in fits and starts as you get it, whatever works for you. But Atlas One is fantastic for that. And they're the exempt market dealer that we work with currently. It's all online. You're not going to get blasted with a bunch of sales calls. It's just set up the thing, put your information in there, find out more about our investment and other investments on there, and do those things. So that's the one takeaway I would say, regardless of whether this is an interesting one to you or not. And then finally, this is a great final screen to end off on, which is, what are we even offering? What are you going to get if you invest with WealthShare? What's the return? As Natasha mentioned earlier, we have a minimum investment of $5,000. That's whether it's with an RSP, TFSA, or cash. So cash investment is great as well if that's your preferred method. So that's the minimum to get in. We are offering this to eligible and accredited investors. A lot of these REITs are accredited only, which could be a real barrier to entry. We spent the time and energy and conversations and sleepless nights with our legal team to ensure that we would be open to eligible as well. There is Atlas One can answer all the questions that you might have of whether you fit in those categories. And then our targeted return is 8% preferred, which means that we hit our 8% to our investment group first before the team gets any part of the returns. But we target 12% annualized. And so after that 8% preferred return is, the partnership group, the WealthShare group, will take 20% of what we make after that, and the investors will take 80%. So we run those numbers to make sure we hit anything that we look at. We're targeting 12% returns. But we have that 8% floor. And we're well on our way for our continuous raise of $15 million. We now have a couple assets under the WealthShare umbrella. We're looking at our third, currently $20 million in assets. We're looking at our third project right now and hoping to add that in. And that's the story. We're 1 year in, so we're a newer group, but with newer comes also shared story, shared information, like Natasha said earlier as well. We're now at 200 investors and growing every week. And so being part of the story from the beginning has been a lot of fun for a lot of people. But also with that comes the education component. As we figure things out, as we learn, we share it back.
Yeah. Just to clarify, the term eligible and accredited investor is not a term we have defined. A lot of people think that's our definition. you will see those terms everywhere. If you start looking at any sort of private investment, whether it's real estate or not, if it's a private security or a private investment in Canada, those terms are defined by the CRA and the Securities Commission. And so that's why those things are there. Now, it's not our job to tell you which one you are, and we don't even need to see proof of that. But the exempt market dealer who puts together an investment for you will work on those things with you and ask you those questions, which category you fall into. If you're not at the status yet to be compliant, they will tell you, here's the things, once you are at this stage, here's what would make you eligible. And then the only other thing I was going to share is our website, WealthShare.ca. On here, if you click on how to invest, this page pops up and it walks down the steps here for you. And there's a button here at the bottom, and this takes you right to the Atlas One platform, and you're going to make an investor account if you're looking to invest in what we are offering and what all the other opportunities are on the Atlas One platform. So feel free to do that. You can make a profile with just basic information, and that will allow you to kind of poke around and see all of the cool things on there. So I highly suggest doing that. Sound good?
That sounds great. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Andrea, for joining us. I know how busy you are, so I appreciate it. I'm not sure if we interrupted a painting session or a 10K run, but I appreciate you coming and joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And sharing your information. We'll do this again soon. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Cheers.